Welcome to the second part of In Conversation with Portia, the African Echo. We are still joined by Dr. Gabriel. We are looking at the history of the community radio stations in South Africa as we are celebrating the 3 decades of this medium and the expertise that they came with. You know, Dr. Gabriel is one of the founders of many community radio stations. I'm saying he's a founder because they're one of the brains of people that started the community radio stations. We are looking at different aspects into how they started and why, the vision behind it, so that we can move forth knowing very well the people that started. We're definitely talking to the Godfather, and he's still with us. Dr. Gabriel, thank you so much again for joining us on the second part. Coming back now to 1995, with the emergence of stations like Radio Maritzburg, Zibonele FM, Highway Radio, how did you feel witnessing the growth now of community radio stations across the country?
Yeah, it was wonderful, but it was a challenging time. And it was challenging time because not all the community radios that came to the play were real community radio stations. So one of the challenges was that they were, remember the principles I mentioned of ownership, yes, participation, independence, etc. Some groups of people thought that it was easy to get a step into broadcasting by applying for a community radio station license without really representing communities, without ownership of the communities, as a step to later on become more of a commercial enterprise. And that became one of the biggest challenges for the sector and for the NCRF and for all of us, to try to look at how to guide the process and make sure that there were check and balances that whatever it was implemented was true community radio stations. And I think that challenge have not ended. 95 continues. I think at the moment we have around 250 community radio stations in the country. I don't know all of them. I used to know all of them at some stage. But at this stage, I think that there are some community radio stations that are great and some that they are not so great. And there are some that are actually bad. And so it's like in any industry, I think you have principles and values that need to be followed. The climate was exciting. The opportunities were immense. And the benefits that community radios brought to communities were great. But again, there was a scale. Some radios were doing a great job and other radios were not doing a great job. Right. And the other issue, not only in South Africa, but around the world, was resources.
It's always the resources and resources. Now, let's reflect on the 30 years of community radio in South Africa. Maybe I'm just going to put this into 2 questions into one, Dr. Gabriel, for your time as well. What would you consider as the most significant impact on the society that we broadcast for? And what may be the milestones that stand up for you and say, this is what I'm taking, and this has really outshined the sector of community radio?
And I'm going to talk about those community radio that I really believe are community radio stations following the principle that we discuss. I think in those cases, community radios can make an incredible impact at community level because especially in South Africa, especially in a country where as diverse as South Africa, culturally, religiously, but with the level of inequities that South Africa have. Remember, South Africa is number 1 in the Gini coefficient. That is the coefficient that measures inequity, the people, what the haves and the have-nots. So the possibility of community members to be able to express their voices and to be able to have a platform in which they can bring their issues and discuss their issues and advocate for issues are huge, huge. Many people say community radio brought voice to the voiceless. I always have a problem with that little slogan because everybody has a voice. The problem is that you need to have the platform and the opportunities to be able to put that voice across. And I think the incredible impact of community radio was to popularize radio broadcasting. Is not only for people that study journalism. Everybody have the right to express their opinion, freedom of expression, and everybody and every community have the right to have a safe platform that is independent, that you're not going to be punished for, to be able to engage in issues that are important to that specific community, because all communities are different and all community radio stations are unique. So there's not a perfect formula, but it is about principles. So for me, the biggest impact was provide a platform where people could voice their concerns, not only their concerns, their art, their music, their news, their issues, their education, their humor, in their languages of their choice. And not like in the old South African SABC services was sort of imposed from top to down. So I think that is the biggest achievement of community radio. The second question was?
The milestones that stand out for you.
Well, milestones, they have been many, and some of them, as it happened in lives, there are times in which those periods of really good things and periods of very bad things. The creation of the NCRF was a very important milestone. In December 1993, Orlando, Soweto, a group of people representing community radio stations for the country, pulled together to try to look at a network that will support the movement. But the NCRF was full of issues, of problems, of growing pains, like any organization that starts. But it had times that were really good, times that were really bad. But as a whole, if you look around the world at community radio stations in different countries, from South America to Canada to Australia to Asia, you will find that those that have vibrant networks and vibrant organizations supporting them and providing them with advocacy and training have better possibilities of success. I think that obviously the IBA, the Independent Broadcasting Authority, was a milestone in which regulated the broadcasting field and created the three-tier sector. But again, then it have good times and bad times. The same with ICASA. They became highly bureaucratic, highly inefficient, and there were corruption sometimes and this and that, like any organizations, like alive bodies. And then if you look at the lifespan of the stations that have been on air for 30 years, they have gone through incredible successes and incredible deep problems. But I think that they are, if I think aloud, there are certain key factors that influence the development of a sustainable community radio movement. And I think the first one is that before you start a community radio station, you need to have a planning phase in which you define and understand what community radio is. When you talk the same language and talk with the same voice. Because if one person say community radio is this and the other one is that, you need to merge those ideas and have a common vision of the meaning of community radio. So, and I think in many times community radios are started without thinking and doing the proper homework. The second thing is obviously the media context of the country, and how the policies the country had. Pre-94, we had to go pirate. Post 94, we have a regulatory authority that help us. For me, something that is key, Portia, is the issue of participation.
Right.
The involvement of the community members. And by that, I'm not meaning representatives only, I'm meaning really community members like the Gogo I was talking about in the beginning with that story. Another key issue, governance and management of community radio stations. Some of the community radio stations in South Africa and around the world have been amazing. Some have been appalling. If you don't have good management practice and governance practices and good boards, good trust, you are in a big problem. And then training and capacity building, remember that most of these people are not journalists like you or people that have, no, they are people from the community that is demystifying that, but providing support, supervision, and training. Radio, as you know, is about storytelling. Africa in general is a wonderful pot for storytelling, but you need to guide people to do that, and of course, resources and technology and having the right piece of equipment. If you have a recorder that is not working, if you don't have batteries or solar for your things, you need to have not fancy things, but basic things. And then the quality of your programming, we can have this interview, but if you mess this in the editing, if you cut important things, if you don't put people that you interview, the challenge is you have half an hour or 15 minutes or 1 hour, and you need to have the skills to be able to do that. And that is something that also quality program, sustainability, financial, social, and institutional sustainability, and again, the capacity of accessing support, donor support, or corporate support without influencing your independence. These are, for me, key factors that will make or break community radio stations.
It just comes together now, Dr. Gabriel. Your love, you started in Zubonele, working with the health issues and topics around it. Now, you transitioned into a role at RX Radio, the Memorial Children's Hospital. I have met you. Yes, I did.
Yes.
through RX
Yes,
Radio.
we met.
Now, a few months ago, absolutely. Now, take us through what inspired you to focus on a radio platform by children and for children.
Look, actually, like I was hinting at the beginning when I was talking, my field as a doctor have been children, child health, child participation, children's right. And I work with children all my life. So when we started at Sibonelle, the community health workers were the first broadcasting, Gogo was broadcasting, and then there were kids. And we start training children, and they have their own programs, they have their own stories and things like that. We have this saying in Africa, children are there to be seen, but not to be heard. And especially when you look at sick children that have serious conditions, children that are disabled and discapacitated physically and in wheelchairs and with conditions that they will have a very short period of life in this world, and then having working with children all my life and with sick children all my life, I thought that it was critical to provide them with a platform in which they could voice their stories. They could tell from their perspective what means to be sick. If you're sick doesn't mean that you are unable to do a lot of things, that you cannot be a wonderful DJ, that you cannot be a singer, that you cannot be a chess player, that you cannot be a rapper, And the idea was, Red Cross Children's Hospital is the most well-known pediatric hospital in South Africa. Pediatric is for children, and I worked there for many, many years. So I thought, let's start a radio station run by the children and for children at Red Cross Children's Hospital, and we started there in 2016, and the station is going to be now 10 years next year. and we also moved to Brooklyn Chest, is another hospital, and to Pearl Hospital. And it has been an amazing journey. We have trained, I think, more than 180 reporters,
Right.
age 4 to 18, and or 5 actually. 5 was our younger to 18, and we have won many awards, the World Health Organization, South African Radio Awards, and but again, you mentioned resources is always the problem. One, COVID was a big issue. COVID hit not only RX Radio but many NGOs badly. Funding was very difficult. The funding landscape changed. But the RX Radio continues. I am not directly involved as before. Obviously, I found the station. I was the first manager, but then Noluyolo and Romani took over in 2021, doing a great job, but really struggling to get funds on an ongoing basis. But the station is still going strong, still broadcasting, but it's an internet. We got the license, but an FM low power transmitter license.
Oh, okay.
A low power transmitter license. So we broadcast inside the
state
premium of the hospital, but then through the internet, and then we have syndication with other community radio stations. But no, it has been an amazing radio station, and I think we won already 6 or 7 South African Radio Awards. And then in 2020, the World Health Organization gave us the prize as with another project, I think from China, I can remember, as the most innovative health projects in the world. So yeah, it's a wonderful journey, and yeah. But thanks for asking about RX Radio. It's very dear. Well, as you can hear me, I'm very passionate as you about community radio.
Absolutely. That's, I mean, I'm just following on the greater footsteps of the soldiers that actually founded this. Dr. Gabriel, kindly assist us as broadcasters, journalists, presenters in the media space. We find it really sometimes difficult to actually put the kids into conversation. You can put the aspects such as the legalities that have to come with talking to the children, but also itself to talk to a child. Sometimes you'll find a very small one who'll just take the time to answer. That we call dead air in radio, which is something that's my boss will frown upon. But you've worked with them as you have championed this section of broadcasting. Kindly assist us. How do we navigate and ensure that we bring in also the voice of children into the 21st century, but not only that, but into the radios of our communities?
Look, obviously, the experience of working with children for 50 years already helps. And when you work with sick children, also it helps to understand a lot about children. But at the same time, we need to look back at the child within. Each of us were children, and each of us were children at some stage. Doesn't matter how young or old we are. So coming in touch with that child within helps. But actually, it's much more than liking children. Liking children doesn't make you a good communicator with children. You need to learn. One of the first steps that I took when I started the radio station was to train radio producers in working with children. And I still do that with medics, with nurses, with physios, with OTs. I run workshops about how to communicate with children. But the other thing is developing training guidelines. And I developed training guidelines with a team of people over the last 20 years that we have tested all over Africa, and with that is very much child-centered methodologies. Children learn through play. Children learn through imitation, but children mainly learn or are ready to learn and talk when you develop trust. So the main issue is to develop trust. And the other thing is journalists like to talk on behalf of children. Adults like to talk on behalf of children. So if you want to know how a child feels, what he or she thinks, what she or he knows, what she or he wants, ask him. Don't make assumptions. Ask them what they feel. And that's what the radio station does. Gives the children the opportunity to talk about things that are important to them. Of course, it's different to talk to a 5-year-old about death than to talk to a 12-year-old about death. So the developmental stages of the children have a lot to do. But it's about looking at developing capacity building, skills, competencies to communicate with children and to build trust and to make it a game. It needs to be fun. All the kids that come to RX Radio have an incredible amount of fun. They have their own shows, their own programs, etc.
Absolutely. Well, as we are just moving closer and closer to the end, because I can talk forever with you, Dr. Gabriel. That's what I can tell. As the founder, I called you initially as the godfather of community radio in South Africa. How would you like your contributions to community radio in the country to be remembered?
Yeah. Look, I think there were many godfathers and godmothers. Definitely, it wasn't only me. There were giants that were working. Some of them have. Will mention the one that have passed. Two people that have passed that were incredible. Libby Lloyd, that was one of the first commissioners in the IBA, and she was the first director of the MDDA. And Edric Gonfinkel, the guy that founded Cassette Education Trust and one of the main founders of Bush Radio. But there were many, many others all over the country. And I think the only way to remember all these sort of, like you were saying, we were the soldiers that were starting something, and implementing something is, like in all these things, is to look at community radios that are true community radios, to look at community radios that make you proud, to look at the community radios that are actually providing a critical service to their community, to look at community radios that are honest, not corrupt, that they produce quality programming, to look to switch on into a radio station and not 3 seconds do like this and change your dial because this is boring or this is only music. I want to listen to community radios that make sense, maybe not to me as an outsider, but to the communities that are serving, because their own communities own them. So that for me will be the best way to keep the tradition of struggle and the tradition and the passion for something that I think is a unique medium. Radio is a unique medium, but I think community radio is an amazing space for education, for growth, for development, for freedom of expression.
Dr. Gabriel, I cannot express my excitement right now. I am so humbly blessed, and I don't even have the correct words in English anymore. I think Zulu has just come back in.
Portia, no, let me say thank you to you. I think that what you are doing is a great idea. I think to celebrate community radio in South Africa, 30 years, nothing better than to tell the story that has a beginning, a middle, and hopefully it will never have an end. It will continue to grow and things like that. So thank you for taking the trouble and doing the research and getting the interviews with people that play a role in different ways. And good luck. And I'm sure it's going to be a very powerful and useful piece of history for our beloved South Africa, no?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gabriel. I know you don't want to be called all those fancy names, but I'm just saying from the bottom of my heart, thank you so very much. Ngiyabonga. That is history. What a journey. What a legacy Thank you for joining us on this episode of In Conversation with Portia, the African Echoes. We are incredibly grateful to Dr. Gabriel Urgoiti for sharing his invaluable experiences and the insights as we celebrate the 3 decades of community broadcasting. Let us continue to support and honor the platforms that empower our diverse voices. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll be exploring another vibrant world of community media in South Africa with another incredible guest. Until then, I'm Portia, encouraging you to keep this conversation alive. Leave your comments. We'd like to hear from you. Goodbye.